Hey there, Amy Hetrick here. Welcome to my channel. This week I thought I'd do something a little bit different, and I thought I would just show you how I go about doing one of my typical illustrations where I take a photo and then I draw it in my style, my more illustrative children's book style. And today I'm drawing this one, the bunny and the flowers, and I'm going to show you how I do that. In this illustration, I'm doing what I normally use, which is my watercolor and gouache palette. Then I also use colored pencils on top and talk about what brand those are in the video. And then I also use my Neocolors on top of that. This is a mixed media style that I'm known for. So if you want to paint along with me, grab your supplies and come join me at my art table. So when I am creating, I like to just put my first layer of watercolors very loosely. I get a really large, the biggest brush that I have of watercolors, because that gives me a more loose look, which is what I'm going for in my type of illustration, which is more of a children's book type of illustration. I am following a reference photo. I'll try to include what that is. And so I'm looking at the reference photo and I'm just trying to copy what I see, but I do it in my very loose style. Right here I'm doing bunny. I had stopped to dry it because I'm impatient, and so I have one of those like hair dryer type heat gun things. Now I'm adding some green, and it's just really fun to create like this. It's very loose and relaxing to me. Right here, not worried about the colors mixing. I like that look. I like it when things bleed together. That's the whole fun of watercolor to me, and I just like the way it looks. So here I'm adding more green. I kind of like to use different shades, and that always adds some nice dimension to it. And as you can see here, I went over the bunny, and that was because the bunny was dry. If the bunny was not dry before I did that, it would have bled all over. So think about that when you go to do your different layers. Watercolor is definitely a layering process. So if you don't want things to bleed together, you're going to have to take the time to stop and dry it. Like I said, I use a heat gun, and that helps, or you can just let it air dry. Air drying is always the best. It turns out the best, but if you're impatient like me, that's what you do. Here I'm adding some yellow, because if you see in the picture, there's flowers. So I'm adding the bright yellow flowers. Because springtime, you have these nice bright flower colors. So pretty. And the yellow is kind of bleeding a little bit into the bunny's face, and that's intentional because he's like munching on the flowers. And I don't mind here if the green mixes in with the yellow. That kind of looks nice to me. I just didn't want the colors bleeding into the bunny itself. And this is, again, it's a process. So if you also have to remember that in watercolor, things dry much lighter than they appear when you put them down. So you need to do several layers if you want something real bright. Like the green kept getting really faded by the time it dried. I knew I needed to add more to it to get it to the color that I wanted. As you can see here in my setup, I have a two-sided water thing, which is necessary with watercolor because you really need one side to cleaning your water, and the other side stays as clean to when you go to get your colors wet in the palette, because they dry out in your palette, so you need to reactivate it with more water. So it's always important to have a dirty side water and then a clean side with your watercolors to keep your colors from mixing. I really like the bright green that's in the center. That's such a pretty green for springtime because everything in springtime is brand new and everything's starting to grow and bloom, and the bright greens are necessary when you're painting this. So fun. Okay, now here I'm taking, I took the time and I let it dry. I think I just let it air dry, or I may have done the heat gun, I can't remember. And now I'm doing my favorite part, which is the more illustrative drawing side. Drawing has always been my favorite. I love painting, but drawing's my favorite. So I'm using my favorite colored pencils here. It's by Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils. They go over paint just beautifully. You can see right here that it's just smooth as butter going over it. I'm deciding on what colors I have. I'm slowly working up to getting more colors because I just like this style of illustration the best. But one of my favorite colors is Payne's Gray, not the one that I'm using right now, but the color that I used on the eye. And it's such a good just color to use when you're outlining things or illustrating and drawing things. It's not the harsh black line. It gives you that nice little darker gray line, which just looks better in my opinion. And here I'm just shading. I'm looking at my reference photo and just, not trying to get a real likeness. That's not the way I roll, but I am trying to, look for the, shading and the shadows and where different colors are. This bunny has a couple different colors in him, so I did the paint color and just a base color of like a light brown, but now I'm going over it with the colored pencils, and it just adds that nice texture and dimension when you have a bunny, especially when you're dealing with the short fur. You want that to show, and that's a little bit hard to do with watercolors. It can be done, but I prefer to do mixed media and add those textures with the colored pencils. As you can see, I change how I hold my pencils. I hold it on the side a lot of times. That gives me a bigger line to work with, and I just play. This is the type of art that I like to do, where I'm just playing. I'm not trying to get it perfect. I'm not worried about selling the piece. You don't ever want to think about that. You just want to create for the sake of creating and just let loose and enjoy. If you've never done this kind of creating, that's how I suggest. And the more you do it, the better you get. Just take a reference photo and just draw what you see, and just play and learn what your language of communicating is with marks making. Maybe that be making hash marks or dots or whatever it is. And some people really enjoy trying to get it as close to realistic as possible. And if that's what you like to do, go for it. I like the more whimsical look like you would find in a children's book. That's just who I am. And it's just super fun for me. As you can see, I'm adding layering with these particular colored pencils are really great for layering over top of the paint, but then also each other. You can go several layers and it blends so nicely. And it's just so fun to just add the colors. So you can see I'm adding it to the ear. It's a super cute little bunny. Okay, I'm not sure. Oh yes, here we go. I was trying to figure out what's hard with illustrations is getting the right white. I'm still on the quest for finding the correct white to go over top of things to make eyes like this. And I think that was here, let me pull. It's a Derwent drawing pencil. Chinese white was what I used, but sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes I'll go back with some white gouache, and I will do that. And I sat there and said that this illustration had watercolor, but honestly, it's a half and half of watercolor and gouache. The palette I have is gouache and watercolor. Gouache is a little bit more vibrant than watercolor, but it works the same way. And so I combine them. Some colors I like the more matte look, and then some colors I can only find in watercolor, so that's where I have it. Here I was trying to draw whiskers, and I was trying to do light color whiskers, because if you look at a bunny, they're like white, kind of like cats are, but that just doesn't show up. So use your common sense and use a color that will show up. And here I am, I'm like trying to get some shading on the flowers, and adding another yellow was not working. I think I start to go in here with trying to find the right green to go around it, and this is what I like to call, it's kind of like negative painting, where you go around an object, or negative drawing, whatever it's called, where you go around an object with a darker color like you do in the background around it, and that allows, in this case, the flowers to pop out. So I'm doing the green, kind of like going around in the green, what you would see through the green of the leaves behind the flower and stuff like that, and that'll help the flower pop through. Finally found the right color. I'm on a quest to get some more greens, because I realized I only had a few colors of greens, and it wasn't quite the colors I was wanting. As you can see, I'm going around and just trying to add the colors. It's so fun. One of the things that I would like to do this spring is I want to go and draw more from life, because I really do think, even if you're not one that wants to draw super realistic or anything like that, drawing from life is such a game changer when it comes to drawing and learning how to draw, because it's just one of those skills that you need to learn. You go and you look at something and you study it, and you just draw what you see, and that helps all kinds of artists learn. That's why it's so important when you're doing official lessons, and or if you look at this and study the masters and how they learn to draw. They all did like life drawing, where you go out and you look at things, or you look at a still life and you just draw what you see, and everybody can do that. I mean, you do that around your house. I do that a lot of times when I'm watching TV, and I will either draw the characters on the TV that I'm watching, or I'll draw the TV and the TV stand it's sitting on, and I draw, whatever I'm seeing, and you just practice drawing, and it doesn't matter what style you do it in. It's just the fact that you're putting on paper what you see. And that's, just a tip, that if you are learning to draw, or you're trying to improve your drawing, we're all trying to improve our drawing. I'm still trying to improve drawing, and I've been drawing my entire life. And I still, every day, work at it to try to get better and better at it. Okay, that was a little bit of a tangent, but just, anyway. Yeah, so here I am, I'm just adding the green leaves and just getting these flowers to pop. I can't remember what this type of flowers are, but I think it's kind of like a weed, if I'm honest. I think it's one of those weeds that are just so pretty. Some of the springtime weeds that grow up are some of the prettiest things. Here I am, I'm adding more yellow because I didn't like how it didn't turn out very bright. And I'm just continually working on getting these flowers to pop out. I just love mixed media. Mixed media, if you've never heard of that term, you hear artists talk about that they're a mixed media artist. It's just like it sounds. So media, the mediums you use are what you're using, like watercolor, paint, drawing, pencils, excuse me, not drawing, pencils, charcoal, whatever the medium. But most people, most artists typically use one. So they are a painter who they use acrylic paint or oil paint or watercolor paints. Or you have your artists who only use pencil or pen or ink or whatever it is. I like to use it all. Like, I just really enjoy the look of using more than one medium. I think it adds dimension and texture, and it's just super fun. I just really enjoy doing it. My favorite, though, two things are the gouache and watercolor on the bottom, and then the colored pencils on the top. And later on, you will see I also use, what are they called? Let me find out, because I forget the name already. It is called, it's by Caran d'Ache. They're such a good brand. Neocolor 2. So they look like crayons. Maybe I'll insert a photo, but they look like a crayon, and they feel like a crayon when you use them, but they're water soluble. So when you draw with it, you can either leave it like the crayon mark that it looks, or you can take water over top of it, activate it, and it looks like a watercolor paint when you're done. I also forgot here, I'm using another medium, which looks like it's just a colored pencil, but it's not. It's a watercolor pencil. So you'll see that when I draw it on, I'll go back then with paint afterwards. Man, I don't know about anybody else, but my allergies, the allergies are bad today. Excuse me, so I'm drinking coffee to try to get that scratchy sound of my voice out. Anyway, so here I am. I'm using that, it's called, of course, why can I ever remember the name of these things called? I think that one is by Faber-Castell. That's Faber-Castell's watercolor pencils. Faber-Castell is just one of those brands that are just superior when it comes to, what do you call it? Why can't I think of words? Materials. Art supplies. There we go. Art supplies. They're just superior. You get what you pay for in art supplies. I have become a bit of an art supply snob the older I get. It's because really using quality stuff does make a difference in your art. It's a more pleasant experience. It behaves better. The light fastness, which means the longevity of it being able to, not fade over time, is important. If you're going to go through all of the work and time it takes to make a good piece, I want it to last. I want it to not fade over time. I want it to be archival and stuff like that. So using good quality art supplies are worth it. And things like these colored pencils and even the watercolor paints and stuff, they do last a while. So you might pay for them up front, but they last quite a bit of time. So you get your money's worth out of them. And they're just so pretty. And all the colors, I have the tendency to buy. I like to, I don't particularly like buying sets anymore. I used to buy sets, like full sets, and that can be expensive. But I find that I only work with a certain amount of colors. Like, I can get very overwhelmed with a whole bunch of colors. So you're better off going to, a company like Pick Blick or somewhere like that, where you can buy the colored pencils individually and just buy the few colors that you like, especially if you're trying out a new supply and you're not sure if you're going to like it. Just go and buy a few colors and test them out and see if you enjoy it before you go buying more. That's what I do, and that seems to work really well. As you can see, I'm still using the watercolor pencil, and I'm going around the bunny to get the bunny to pop out in color. And now I'm over here doing the flowers on this side. In my illustration, you'll see, not my illustration, the photo, you'll see that the flowers in the very back are far away. So I don't add a lot of detail to them because I want them to still keep that appearance of being in the background in the distance, and so they're going to be more muted and faded and not have all the detail that I'm adding here. This really is the fun part of an illustration, is bringing out all of the details. And it's important not to go overboard. It's less is always seems to be more to me. The less detail you give on something, it's just more interesting, in my opinion. Unless you like all that detail, then go for it. Do whatever. You have to be the type of artist that you want to be. And here I'm going back and I'm adding water to activate that watercolor pencil. It's pretty cool how it's doing that. And it still gives you the lines and the texture, which I like, but then turns it into paint at the same time. And that just is adding some darker shades to what I'm doing. So fun. Okay, I'm trying to think, what else would you guys like to know? You probably are going to ask me what my paintbrush is, aren't you? So let me look at that one. I believe that one is, I'm looking at my art desk and I'm trying to find it. Oh, here it is. It is, let's see, a Princeton Aqua Elite, and it's a number 12, so fairly large brush. And just a tip on watercolor brushes, that you do need to take care of them. So they should only need to be washed with water, but you need to make sure that you do not leave your paint brushes in the water. This is so important. If you leave your paint brushes sitting in the water, it's going to cause your brushes to break down and water to go up that, oh, there is a name for it, the metal part. Oh, why can't I ever think of words? But anyway, the water will go up into that metal part, especially if it's going above that metal part, and it'll loosen your bristles of your brush, and you don't want to do that. So especially if you buy a good watercolor brush like this one, you know they're not cheap, so you want to take care of it. So just rinse it off, and then you're going to dry it, and then instead of putting it upright into, you know, its holder, I lay it flat on my art table until it's completely dry, and that'll keep the water from going down that metal part and loosening your bristles. Okay, now here I'm going back. I had to wait for that layer to dry, and now I'm going back for the final details. And this is where I might add paint if I want to, or just add more colored pencils. Right here I decided that the white wasn't bright enough, so this is where I'm using that Neo color white that makes it a little bit brighter. I'm happy with that, but then I realized that I smudged out some of the line of that, and so I had to go back with the pencil. I will say your Neo colors, if you use those, they need to be like the last step, because you cannot get the colored pencil to go over top of them once you've used that. So this really needs to be the last step, is using your Neo colors lastly. And they just add darker marks, and just, like I said, that using like a crayon, it reminds me of being a child and coloring, and they're just so fun. There we go. Just trying to, if you want something to show up, put like that yellow flower, if you want that to pop more, then you need to make the background behind it darker, and that'll pop, make the bright light color pop forward, if that makes sense. Oh, I'm so glad I have coffee today. Allergies are kicking today. Okay, I'm getting close to being done with this. You can go a little, you can keep working a piece, and you don't ever want to overwork a piece, especially in my style. I like it to stay loose and free, and so I try not to overdo it. Right here I'm adding the Neo color because I wanted to add some different colors of the yellow than what I had in the paint, and so see how that just makes it really show some definition. And that's really cool. Now the paper that I am using, I'd have to look up what kind of paper I use. I think I'm just using, in this one, it might be, I can't remember if I think it's a watercolor paper, but it's a cheaper watercolor paper I get from Dick Blick. You don't have to, especially when you're just playing. This is just a play session. This isn't something I'm planning on selling. It's okay if you use cheaper paper to practice and play, and save your good paper for finished, pieces. I find that if you use expensive paper, you are too precious with it, and you're scared. You're like, oh no, this piece of paper is like $2 or $3, or sometimes even more than that if you use arches and stuff, and you get scared, and then that just makes your art tight, which is not the type of art I want. I like to be loose and free. So sometimes, using a cheaper paper is good, especially if you're just practicing. And if you are using too expensive of stuff, you won't want to use them. You'll be scared to. So keep that in mind when you're buying things, especially paper. That get a lot of paper. You can get packs. I think I have a pack of Dick Blick drawing paper that was like $8 for a big bundle, and it's great paper, and it actually takes watercolor just fine, and the colored pencils on top. So you can use cheap paper, and it'd be good, just as good sometimes. And here I am adding my always add your signature. That is so important, to sign your name. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this illustration process. I thought it would be fun to just see how I work sometimes, and I hope you come and join me next time, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.